The blizzard buried everything that night. Roads, memories, truth. Montana in December doesn't ask permission. It takes. The wind tore through Blackwater like a living thing, ripping at storefronts, burying cars, erasing footprints before they could finish forming. Minus 12 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of cold that turns breath to ice before it leaves your lungs. Most people stayed inside, doors locked, fires burning, waiting for the storm to pass. Garrett Blackwood was not most people. He walked alone down Main Street, his wooden crutch tapping against frozen concrete in a rhythm he'd learned 20 years ago. Left leg, crutch, right leg, pause. The prosthetic beneath his jeans didn't bend quite right in the cold. Never did, but he'd stopped complaining about things he couldn't change a long time ago. His military jacket was faded, green turned to gray, the patches worn smooth from years of washing. But he still wore it, not for recognition. He'd stopped expecting that. He wore it because it was the only thing that still fit from before. Before the blast, before the hospital, before the world decided he was done being useful. 55 years old, alone, living in a one-room apartment above the hardware store where nobody asked questions and the rent came cheap. Tonight, he'd walk 6 blocks to the pharmacy. Heart medication. The kind you can't skip. The kind that reminds you every morning that your body is counting down whether you're ready or not. The pharmacy had closed early. Storm coming. Everyone went home. Everyone except Garrett. He stopped at the old bus shelter on the corner of 5th and Grant. The bench inside was covered in snow. The overhead light had been broken for months, but it blocked the wind. That was enough. He lowered himself slowly, every joint protesting, every scar remembering. The cold seeped through his jacket, through his jeans, straight into bones that had been shattered and rebuilt with pins and prayers. From his inner pocket, he pulled out a photograph, crumpled, faded, the corners worn soft from years of being held by hands that had nothing left to hold on to. The image was simple, a younger man in desert camouflage kneeling in sand the color of rust. Beside him, a Belgian Malinois, massive, alert, eyes locked on something beyond the camera's frame. Both of them ready, both of them whole. Garrett's thumb traced the outline of the dog's face. That scar above the left eye, the notch in the right ear where shrapnel had clipped it during a mortar attack outside Helmand Province. Titan, his partner, his brother. The only thing that had ever looked at him and seen something worth protecting. Garrett closed his eyes, the wind screamed. But in the silence behind his eyelids, he heard something else. The thump of helicopter blades. The crack of gunfire. The sound of breathing that wasn't his own. Afghanistan. 2004. 20 years ago. A lifetime ago. He'd been 35 then. Strong. Fast. Angry at a world that made sense only when he had orders to follow and enemies to fight. 2nd Marine Division, Kilo Company. The kind of unit that went where others wouldn't. Did what others couldn't. Titan had been assigned to him 3 months into his second deployment. Military working dog, K9117. Belgian Malinois bred for detection, trained for war. 85 pounds of muscle, instinct, and loyalty that didn't ask questions. They cleared buildings together. Walked patrol routes where every shadow could kill you. Titan's nose had found IEDs buried in roads that would have turned Garrett and his squad into red mist. 3 times. 4. He'd stopped counting. And then came the day everything changed. Lieutenant Victor Ravencroft had given the order. Clear the village. Intel said high-value target. Taliban commander. Time-sensitive. Garrett had questioned it. Respectfully. The way Marines are taught. Sir, the locals say it's a wedding. Civilians. Women and children. Ravencroft's face had gone cold. That's an order, Sergeant Blackwood. So they'd gone in. Fast. Hard. The way they'd been trained. And the intel had been wrong. 12 civilians dead. A wedding turned into a massacre. Blood on sand. Screaming that would never stop echoing. The Taliban had responded. Mortars, RPGs. The building Garrett and Titan were clearing had come down on top of them. 60 seconds of the world ending in fire and concrete and darkness. When Garrett opened his eyes, he was buried. Concrete on his chest, rebar through his left leg, blood pooling warm beneath him. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe right. Every attempt sent lightning up his spine. That's when he felt it, digging, frantic, claws against rubble. Titan. The dog dug until his paws bled, moved chunks of concrete twice his weight, pulled debris away piece by piece until he could reach Garrett's arm, and then he'd grabbed, teeth in Garrett's sleeve, and pulled. Garrett had screamed, the rebar shifting in his leg, but Titan didn't stop, pulled him 6 feet, 8, out of the building, into open air, mortars still falling, bullets still flying, and Titan standing over him, between him and the incoming fire. Taking rounds meant for Garrett. One caught him in the shoulder, another grazed his ribs, but he didn't move, didn't run, just stood there, bleeding, protecting. Medevac had come, taken them both, separated them at the field hospital. That was the last time Garrett had seen him. When Garrett woke up in a German hospital, left leg gone below the knee, 17 broken bones, internal bleeding, they said was a miracle he had survived. He had asked about Titan, every nurse, every doctor, every officer who came through. Kia, they'd said, killed in action. The blast took him. Garrett had stopped asking after that. What was the point? The dog was gone. Part of him was gone. Afghanistan had taken everything and given back only pain and pills, and a discharge that came with a handshake and a medal he'd never opened. 20 years. He'd thought about Titan every single day. Wondered if the dog had suffered. Hoped it had been quick. Carried the guilt of surviving when something that loyal, that pure hadn't. A gust of wind slammed into the bus shelter. Snow swirled. Garrett blinked. The photograph in his hand was wet. Not from snow, from something else. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, folded the photo, tucked it away. Time to go home. He gripped his crutch, started to stand. That's when the headlights cut through the storm, a patrol car, black and white, moving too fast for the conditions. It skidded slightly as it turned the corner tires, fighting for grip on ice. The car stopped, 15 feet away, headlights blinding. Garrett didn't move, didn't run. Running was for people who had somewhere to go. 3 doors open, 3 officers stepped out. Young, confident. The kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Officer Hayes led, 28, crew cut, square jaw. The kind of face that looked good on recruitment posters and bad in the moment before something terrible happened. Behind him came Brooks, taller, quieter, the muscle. And Harrison, nervous, newer, still trying to prove something. Hayes walked forward, his breath clouded in the frozen air. He looked at Garrett the way people look at garbage they're tired of stepping around. "What's a bum doing out here?" Garrett didn't answer. He'd learned a long time ago that some questions weren't meant to be answered. They were meant to provoke. Hayes stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Garrett's voice came out low, steady, the way it always did when anger was close. "I'm not looking for trouble, officer. Just heading home." Brooks laughed. "Home, you got a home, thought you people just slept wherever." You people. 2 words that carried the weight of centuries. 2 words that reduced a decorated Marine to a color, to a problem, to something less than human. Garrett's jaw tightened, but he didn't move, didn't raise his voice. "I'm a veteran," he said quietly. "I served. I earned the right to sit on this bench, same as anyone." Hayes' smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, a veteran. Stolen valor much." He reached down, grabbed Garrett's crutch, yanked it away. Garrett stumbled, caught himself against the bench. The cold metal bit into his palm. Brooks stepped forward, kicked at Garrett's prosthetic leg. The impact sent a shock of pain up Garrett's spine. That even real, or you faking that too? Harrison hung back. Uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to stop it. Garrett looked up, met Hayes's eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not words, not threats, just understanding. Hayes saw a man he could break, a man the world had already forgotten, a man who wouldn't fight back because fighting back meant jail or worse. Garrett saw a coward, a bully, a boy playing dress-up in a uniform he hadn't earned and didn't deserve. You know what Hayes said, turning back toward the patrol car? I think we got a dangerous individual here. Refusing to comply. Aggressive behavior. I haven't moved, Garrett said. You calling me a liar? I'm stating a fact. Hayes's hand went to his belt, to the radio clip there. Then he smiled, slow, cruel. Nah, radio's for paperwork. We got something better. He walked to the back of the patrol car, popped the rear door, and that's when Garrett heard it. Claws on metal, a low rumble, not quite a growl, something deeper, a dog. Hayes gripped the leash, pulled, and out of the darkness came a Belgian Malinois, huge, muscular, coat dark in the headlights, eyes sharp, alert. The dog moved with precision, every step controlled. This wasn't a pet, this was a weapon. Hayes held the leash tight, grinned at Garrett. This is Rex, Police K9, trained to take down threats. And you, friend, you're looking pretty threatening right now. Brooks laughed again. Yeah, real scary. Old man with one leg. The dog stood perfectly still, waiting, the way trained dogs do. Garrett didn't look at Hayes. He looked at the doing, and something in his chest tightened. The way it moved, the way it held itself, the slight favor of the right front paw, the scar tissue visible even in the dim light. No, it couldn't be. Hayes noticed Garrett staring, thought it was fear. Oh, you scared now? Good, maybe you'll learn some respect. He loosened the leash, gave the command. Rex, take him down. The crowd that had gathered was small, 5 people, maybe 6, watching from doorways, from across the street, close enough to see, far enough to pretend they couldn't. Among them a woman, Elena Hartwell, 42, nurse at Blackwater General, Army medic before that. Iraq, 2 tours. She knew what she was looking at. She pulled out her phone, started recording. The dog moved forward, 3 steps, 4, and then stopped. Hayes jerked the leash. Rex, I said, take him down. The dog didn't move. Its ears went up, forward, alert, focused entirely on Garrett. Garrett's breath caught. That scar above the left eye, the notch in the right ear. His hand moved, slow, shaking, reached toward his jacket pocket, pulled out the photograph. His eyes went from the photo to the dog. Back. Again. 20 years. The dog's tail gave a single uncertain wag. Garrett's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Tighten. The word hung in the frozen air. The dog's entire body shifted, ears pinned back. Not in aggression, in recognition. Hayes yanked the leash. What the hell are you doing, Rex? Attack. But the dog wasn't Rex anymore. The dog pulled. Hard. The leash slipped from Hayes's grip, and Titan ran. Not at Garrett. To him. 85 pounds of muscle and memory slammed into Garrett's chest. Not hard, not aggressive. Gentle. Careful. The way a son comes home to a father he thought was dead. Garrett's crutch fell. He went down to his knees in the snow. His arms came up, wrapped around the dog, and Titan pressed his massive head into Garrett's chest and made a sound that wasn't a bark or a growl. It was a cry, the kind of sound that comes from somewhere deeper than training, deeper than instinct. It came from a place where loyalty lives, where memory doesn't fade, where 20 years means nothing because some bonds don't break just because the world says they should. Garrett's hands found that scar above Titan's eye, the notch in his ear, the exact spot on his left shoulder where shrapnel had torn through fur and muscle, And Garrett had wrapped it with his own shirt because there was no medic and no time, and all he'd had was pressure and prayer. "It's you," Garrett whispered. "It's really you." Titan licked Garrett's face. Once. Twice. His tail wagging so hard his entire body shook. The street had gone completely silent. Hayes stood frozen, mouth open, radio in hand but no words coming. Brooks took a step back. Harrison just stared. Elena kept recording, tears running down her face. Because some things you can't watch and stay unmoved. Some things remind you what the world is supposed to be, what loyalty looks like, what love is when it's real. Garrett buried his face in Titan's fur, and for the first time in 20 years, something in his chest that had been frozen solid began to thaw. "They told me you were dead," he said. "They told me the blast took you." Titan whimpered, pressed closer. A voice from the crowd broke the silence. "Elena," stepping forward, "leave him alone." Hayes spun. "What I said, leave him alone. This man is a veteran. That dog knows him." "You don't." Hayes's face went red. "Ma'am, step back. This is official police business." Elena hissed up her phone, still recording. "I'm a veteran too. Army, Iraq. And I'm watching you harass a disabled vet for sitting on a public bench." More phones came out, more cameras, more witnesses. Hayes looked around, realized the narrative was slipping. He reached for Titan's leash. "That's department property." Garrett's voice cut through, low, dangerous. The voice of a man who'd spent 20 years being quiet and was done. "His name is Titan, not Rex. Titan, we served together. 2nd Marines, Afghanistan, 2004. Hayes laughed, forced, bitter. "That dog's been with Blackwater Pede for 6 years. You're confused, old man." Garrett stood, slow, using Titan for support. The dog pressed against his leg. The left one, the one that wasn't there anymore. The space Titan had always occupied when they walked patrol together. 20 years, Garrett said. "You think I'd forget. You think I'd mistake any dog for this one." He turned to Titan, spoke a single word, not English, Pashto, the language they'd used in the field. Zargon. Titan's ears shot up. Garrett gave a hand signal, one they'd practiced 1,000 times. The signal for protect. Titan moved, positioned himself between Garrett and Hayes, not aggressive, not attacking, just there. A living shield, the way he'd been trained, the way he'd always been. The crowd murmured. Hayes's hand went to his belt. Brooks stepped forward. Elena's voice rang out. "I'm uploading this right now live. So everyone think carefully about what happens next." The wind howled. Snow fell. The moment stretched. Finally, Hayes backed down, grabbed the leash, tried to pull Titan toward the car. Titan didn't budge. "Let's go, Rex. Now." Garrett knelt again, put his hand on Titan's head, spoke quietly. "Stand down, boy. It's okay." And Titan, trained to obey commands, trained to follow orders, did something he'd never been trained to do. He looked at Hayes, then back at Garrett, and chose. He sat, right at Garrett's feet, tail still wagging, eyes locked on the man who'd wrapped his wounds and shared his rations, and whispered to him in the dark when the mortars fell. Hayes's face went white, then red, then something worse. "This isn't over," he said, voice tight. "You're interfering with police property. We'll be back." He turned. Brooks and Harrison followed. They got in the car, slammed the doors. The engine roared. Tires spun on ice, and they were gone. Garrett sat in the snow. Titan pressed against him. The crowd stood silent. Elena approached. Slowly, she knelt beside them. "You need help getting home." Garrett shook his head. "Just need a minute." She nodded, looked at Titan, then at Garrett. "What you said about Afghanistan, about serving together, that true every word." She pulled out her phone, opened Facebook. The video was already uploading. "Then people need to know." Garrett watched as the views started climbing. 10, 50, 100, faster and faster. He didn't want fame, didn't want attention. He just wanted to go home. But the world, it seemed, had other plans. By the time Garrett made it back to his apartment, the video had been shared 2,000 times. By morning, it would be 2 million. But he didn't know that yet. He sat on his bed, Titan curled at his feet, the exact same spot he used to take in the barracks. In the tent, in the sand. Garrett pulled out the photograph, looked at it, then at Titan. "How are you here?" he whispered. "How are you alive?" Titan's tail thumped once against the floor, and Garrett understood. Some questions don't have answers you can speak. Some miracles don't need explaining. He reached for his phone. Old, cracked screen, barely worked. It buzzed, unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him. Hello, silence. Then breathing. Then a voice, male, deep, controlled. "Garrett Blackwood." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what you are, what you did, and what you're trying to dig up." "I'm not trying to dig up anything. That video, that dog. You need to stop. You need to disappear before you remember things that are better left forgotten." "Who is this?" The line went dead. Garrett sat in the darkness. Titan's ears were up, alert. Outside, the storm continued, snow piling higher, burying the streets, burying the past. But some things Garrett knew can't stay buried forever. He looked at Titan. The dog looked back. And for the first time in 20 years, Garrett Blackwood wasn't alone. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. The way they always had. The morning came gray and cold. Sunday. Garrett woke to Titan's weight pressed against his side. The dog hadn't moved all night, hadn't left. 20 years apart, and he'd settled right back into the space he'd always occupied. Like he'd never been gone at all. Garrett's phone sat on the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, all from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them, reached down, ran his hand along Titan's back. The dog's tail thumped once, twice, then settled. Outside, Blackwater was waking up. Church bells somewhere in the distance. The storm had passed, left behind 2 feet of snow and a silence that felt temporary. Garrett stood, made coffee, black, no sugar. The way Marines drink it when sugar is a luxury you can't carry. He turned on the television, local news, Sunday morning recap, weather, sports. Then, his face. The video played, grainy phone footage, him on his knees in the snow. Titan pressed against his chest. The audio was wind and static, but you could hear it. That sound Titan made. That cry. The anchor's voice was carefully neutral. A viral video out of Blackwater, Montana has people across the country asking questions. The clip shows what appears to be a confrontation between local police and a disabled veteran. But it's what happens next that has social media buzzing. They played it again. Slowed down this time. Titan refusing the attack command, running to Garrett. The recognition. The anchor continued. The man in the video has been identified as Garrett Blackwood, 55, a former Marine who served in Afghanistan. The dog currently assigned to Blackwater Police Department is registered as Rex. But Blackwood claims the animal is actually Titan, his military working dog from 2004. A dog he was told died 20 years ago. Cut to an interview, some expert, animal behavior specialist, explaining how military dogs bond with handlers, how that bond doesn't break, how recognition, even after decades, is not just possible but documented. Then another cut to a statement released by the Blackwater Police Department, a spokesman, young, rehearsed, reading from a prepared statement. The incident captured on video is currently under internal review. Officer Hayes acted in accordance with department protocol. The individual in question was uncooperative and aggressive. The K9 in question, Rex, has been with our department for 6 years and is properly registered. We have no record of any previous handler named Blackwood. We ask the public to refrain from speculation until the investigation is complete. Garrett turned off the television. They were already spinning it, already controlling the narrative. Of course they were. His phone rang, unknown number. He didn't answer. It rang again, different number. He let it go to voicemail. Third time, he picked up. Mr. Blackwood. A woman's voice. Professional. Tired. Who is this Elena Hartwell? We met last night. I'm the one who recorded the video. Garrett said nothing. I'm calling because my phone has been ringing nonstop. News outlets, reporters, they all want to talk to you. They want your story. I don't have a story. Yes, you do, and if you don't tell it, someone else will, and it won't be the truth. Garrett looked at Titan. The dog was watching him, those dark eyes that had seen too much and remembered everything. What do you want from me? Permission to give them your number, to put them in touch. This is bigger than you think, Mr. Blackwood. People are paying attention. I didn't ask for attention. No, but you have it, and men like those officers, they're counting on you staying quiet, like you have been for 20 years. That landed, harder than Garrett wanted to admit. He closed his eyes, took a breath, give them the number. Elena hesitated. There's something else. The department released a statement. They're saying you were aggressive, that the dog was just doing its job. I never moved. I know. I have the video, but that's not the version they're selling. Garrett's jaw tightened. Of course not. There's going to be pushback. They're going to try to discredit you, your service record, your mental health, anything they can use. Let them try. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, you should know. I looked you up. Your service record is sealed. Parts of it. That's not normal. Garrett opened his eyes. No, it's not. What? Because some things the government doesn't want people asking about. He hung up. By noon, the video had 4 million views. By evening, 10 million. Garrett didn't watch the count. He sat in his apartment, Titan at his feet, and tried to remember. He pulled out a box from under his bed. Old, military issue, dusty. Inside, papers, dog-eared and yellowed, medical discharge forms, commendations he'd never framed, and something else, a journal. He'd kept it during deployment, against regulations. But everyone did. Some things you need to write down before they eat you alive from the inside. He flipped to the last entry, dated November 17, 2004. The handwriting was his, younger, angrier, details he tried to forget. The village, the order, Ravencroft's face when it all went wrong. He closed the journal, couldn't read it again, didn't need to. He remembered. Victor Ravencroft. He hadn't thought about that name in years, had buried it along with everything else from that deployment. He opened his laptop. Old, slow, but it worked. Typed in the name. The results came fast. Victor Ravencroft, police commissioner, Blackwater, Montana, appointed 2018, former military, lieutenant U.S. Marines, Afghanistan veteran, decorated, rising star in local politics, rumored to be considering a run for state senate. A photograph, older now, gray at the temples, but the same hard eyes, the same tight smile that never reached past his teeth. Garrett stared at the screen. Blackwater, this town, this nowhere place he'd chosen because it was cheap and quiet and far from everything. And Victor Ravencroft was here. Not a coincidence. Couldn't be. Titan's head lifted, a low growl. Garrett heard it too. Footsteps outside. Heavy. Multiple. He stood, moved to the window, looked down at the street. 3 patrol cars, lights off, parked at angles that blocked the road. His door was on the 2nd floor. One way in, one way out. He checked his phone. 2:17 a.m. Monday morning. They were coming. The knock came hard, authoritative. The kind of knock that says, you don't have a choice. Garrett Blackwood police opened the door. Titan was on his feet, hackles raised, that deep rumble building in his chest. Garrett put a hand on his head. Easy, boy. He opened the door. 6 officers, full tactical gear. Hayes at the front. Brooks behind him. 4 others Garrett didn't recognize. Hayes held up a piece of paper. Warrant for your arrest. On what charge? Assault on a police officer. Interference with police duties. Theft of department property. Garrett didn't move. I haven't assaulted anyone. I haven't stolen anything. The dog, Hayes pointed at Titan. That's department property. You're harboring stolen goods. That dog is mine. The court says different. Now step aside or we add resisting arrest. Garrett looked at the warrant. Signed by Judge Morrison, a man who'd been appointed by the city council, a council that answered to the police commissioner, to Victor Ravencroft. This is illegal, Garrett said quietly. Hayes smiled. That's for the courts to decide. Turn around, hands behind your back. Garrett didn't move. Titan's growl got louder. Brooks pulled his taser. Control your dog. Garrett's voice was steady. He's protecting me because he knows something's wrong. Last warning. Hayes reached for his gun. That's when Titan lunged, not at Hayes, between them. A barrier, teeth bared. The sound coming from him was primal. The sound of a creature that had survived war and wouldn't back down from bullies in uniforms they hadn't earned. Brooks fired the taser. 50,000 volts hit Titan's side. The dog yelped, went down, legs twitching, but even on the ground, he was trying to get up, trying to get back to Garrett. Stop, Garrett moved forward. Hayes grabbed him, slammed him against the wall. Garrett's prosthetic hit wrong. Pain shot up his spine. His leg buckled. Hands wrenched his arms back. Metal bit into his wrists. Cuffs. Too tight. What about my leg? Garrett's voice was strained. I need my crutch. Should have thought of that before you resisted. They pulled him toward the door. Garrett twisted, looked back at Titan. The dog was up, shaking, limping, but standing. Those eyes locked on Garrett. That same look from 20 years ago. The look that said, I won't leave you. Take care of him, Garrett shouted. Someone! A door opened down the hall. Elena, hair in a mess, eyes wide. What's happening? Hayes pushed Garrett forward. Official police business. Go back inside. Elena pulled out her phone, started recording. I said, go back inside. She didn't move. Just kept filming. They dragged Garrett down the stairs. His prosthetic caught. He fell. They didn't slow down, just pulled harder. Outside, the cold hit like a fist. No jacket, no crutch, just metal on his wrists and snow under his one good knee. They threw him in the back of the cruiser, slammed the door. Through the window, Garrett could see his apartment. 2nd floor, the light still on. And in the window, Titan, front paws on the sill, watching, waiting. The engine started. The car moved. And Garrett closed his eyes. The holding cell was 8 by 10. Concrete floor, metal bench, a toilet in the corner that didn't flush right. No blanket, no phone call, no lawyer, just Garrett. And the cold. He sat on the bench, tried to keep weight off his prosthetic. The fit was wrong after the fall. Rubbing, bleeding probably. But they hadn't let him adjust it. Hours passed, hard to say how many. No windows, no clock. The door opened. A man stepped in, not in uniform, suit, expensive, tailored, gray at the temples, hard eyes that had seen violence and learned to like it. Victor Ravencroft, older, heavier, but the same. He stood there, hands in pockets, looking at Garrett the way you look at a problem you thought you'd solved. Sergeant Blackwood. Garrett didn't respond. Victor smiled. It's been a long time. Not long enough. Victor pulled a chair from outside the cell, sat, crossed his legs, comfortable, in control. You should have stayed quiet. Garrett met his eyes. I was quiet for 20 years. And then you had to make that video go viral. I didn't make anything go viral. I sat on a bench. Your officers attacked me. Victor laughed, soft, bitter. Tact. That's a strong word. They were doing their job. Their job was to harass a disabled veteran. Their job was to maintain order. You were a disturbance. Garrett leaned forward. You saw that video, saw Titan, and you remembered what you did, what you covered up. Victor's smile faded slightly. That village, those civilians. Whose fault was that? Victor stood. Slow, deliberate, careful Garrett. You're making accusations you can't prove. Titan's alive. That's proof someone lied. Victor stepped closer, gripped the bars. You think anyone cares about what happened 20 years ago? You think anyone's going to believe a washed-up Marine with PTSD over a decorated police commissioner? Garrett stood. Pain shot through his leg, but he didn't let it show. I think people care about the truth, even when it's ugly. Victor leaned in, close enough that Garrett could smell coffee on his breath. Here's what's going to happen. You'll be released in 48 hours, no charges. But if you keep talking, if you keep making noise, there will be consequences. For you, for that D, for anyone who helps you. He stepped back, straightened his tie. That dog of yours, accidents happen. Would be a shame if something happened to him while you're locked up in here. Garrett's hands curled into fists. Victor walked to the door, paused. Stay quiet, Garrett. It's the only smart play you've got left. The door slammed. Garrett sat, alone, in the dark. But Victor had made a mistake. He threatened Titan, and that was the one thing Garrett would never forgive. The 48 hours passed like 48 years. No food, water from a sink that tasted like rust. The cold seeping into bones that were already more metal than marrow. But Garrett didn't break. He'd survive worse. In deserts that turned men into ghosts. In hospitals where dying was easier than healing. This was just another test, and he'd never been good at giving up. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Victor. It was a federal agent, FBI, badge and everything. Agent Carson, Special Investigations. You're free to go. Garrett stood, slowly. What changed? Public pressure. Your video hit 20 million views. Congresswoman Diaz from Montana made a statement. DOJ opened an inquiry. Commissioner Ravencroft doesn't have the authority to hold you anymore. Carson handed Garrett his phone. Wallet, keys. You should know. This isn't over. There are people asking questions now. Big questions. About what happened in Afghanistan. About K-9 records. About sealed military files. Garrett pocketed his belongings. Where's Titan? Being held at animal control. You can pick him up. They walked out together, through halls that smelled like fear and broken promises. Outside, the sun was setting. Wednesday afternoon, Garrett had lost 2 days. Elena was waiting, leaning against her car. When she saw him, she straightened. You okay? Garrett nodded. Titan's safe. I've been checking on him. They wouldn't let me take him, but he's fed. Warm. Garrett looked at her, really looked. Why are you helping me? Elena's expression shifted, something old and painful crossing her face. Because I know what it's like. To come home and realize the country you fought for doesn't fight for you. And I'm tired of pretending that's okay. She opened the car door. Get in. We're getting your dog back, and then we're going to Washington. Garrett didn't move. Washington. D.C., there's a hearing, Congressional Oversight Committee, military misconduct. Victor Ravencroft's name came up. So did yours. They want you to testify. I don't testify. Elena looked at him, hard. Then what was the point of surviving? Garrett had no answer for that. He got in the car. They drove to animal control in silence. Elena parked, went inside, came back 10 minutes later with Titan on a leash. The dog saw Garrett through the window, started pulling, whining. Garrett opened the door. Titan jumped in, pressed his entire body against Garrett's chest, tail wagging so hard the whole car shook. Garrett wrapped his arms around him. buried his face in that familiar fur. I'm sorry, boy. I'm so sorry. Titan licked his face. Once, twice. Elena got in the driver's seat, started the engine. So, Washington, you and Garrett looked at Titan. The dog looked back. 20 years of silence. 20 years of letting men like Victor win. Garrett's voice was quiet, but certain. I'm in. Elena smiled, pulled out her phone, made a call. Congresswoman Diaz. It's Elena Hartwell. I have Garrett Blackwood. He'll testify. She listened, nodded, hung up. They want you there Friday morning. Flights booked for tomorrow. Wednesday evening departure. That gives you tonight to prepare. Garrett stared out the window. At Blackwater, this town that had been his hiding place. Not anymore. What do you need before we go? Elena asked. Garrett thought about it, then reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages. Found one from a number he didn't recognize. Opened it. Mr. Blackwood, my name is Everett Kane. I used to work for Blackwater PD. I have information about Commissioner Ravencroft. Information you need. Meet me. Garrett showed Elena. She read it, frowned. Could be a trap. Could be the truth. They drove to the address Kane had sent. A diner on the edge of town. The kind that's open 24 hours because nobody who eats there has anywhere better to be. Kane was in the back booth. 50, maybe older. Gray stubble. Tired eyes that had seen too much and decided to care anyway. Garrett slid into the seat across from him. Titan settled at his feet. Kane looked at the dog, then at Garrett. So it's true, that's really him. Garrett nodded. Kane reached into his jacket, pulled out a USB drive, set it on the table. Everything you need is on there. Emails, audio files, internal memos. Victor's been covering up more than just Afghanistan. There are others, other soldiers, other days, other incidents he swept under the rug to protect his career. Garrett picked up the drive. Why now? Why help me? Kane's jaw tightened. Because I've been quiet for 15 years. And quiet men let bad men win. I'm done being quiet. He stood, left cash on the table for a coffee he hadn't touched. Good luck, Mr. Blackwood. Make him pay. And he was gone. Garrett looked at Elena. She looked at the USB drive. We need to see what's on that. They went back to Elena's apartment. Garrett plugged in the drive. Files opened. Dozens of them. Emails from Victor to various officials. Requesting record alterations. Threatening whistleblowers. Covering tracks. Audio recordings. Victor's voice. Clear as day. Ordering subordinates to falsify reports. To intimidate veterans who ask questions. In photos. Documents. Proof of 15 other cases. Soldiers declared KYA who survived. K9s disappeared. Incidents buried. A pattern spanning 20 years. Elena's hands shook. This is enough. This is more than enough. Garrett's voice was hollow. All those men, all those dogs. He destroyed them. All to protect himself. He closed the laptop. Titan's head rested on his knee. Garrett looked at him. We're going to end this. You and me. The way it should have ended 20 years ago. Elena nodded. I'll finalize the flights. We leave tomorrow evening. Garrett stood, looked out the window, at Blackwater, at the mountains beyond. Somewhere out there, Victor Ravencroft was sleeping. Comfortable. Secure. Not for long. The truth was coming. And this time, Garrett wasn't going to be quiet. Thursday morning. The plane touched down at Reagan National just before sunrise. Friday. Garrett watched Washington emerge through the window, monuments catching first light, the Capitol dome, white stone and power and promises that rarely reached men like him. Titan sat at his feet, service dog vest that Elena had gotten overnight, made it legal, made it possible. The dog hadn't left Garrett's side since animal control, slept pressed against his leg on the flight, ears twitching at every sound, still protecting, still loyal. 20 years and that hadn't changed. Elena was across the aisle. She'd barely slept. Spent the flight reviewing the USB files, making notes, building a case that would have made any prosecutor proud. But she wasn't a prosecutor. She was a nurse, a veteran, someone who'd seen enough broken men come home and decided to care. The plane taxied, stopped. Passengers stood, reached for overhead bins, the usual chaos of arrival. Garrett stayed seated, let them pass. No rush. Where he was going, they'd wait. Outside the terminal, a man in a dark suit held a sign. Blackwood, federal protection, Elena had said. DOJ doesn't want anything happening before you testify. Garrett approached. The man's eyes went to Titan, then to Garrett's crutch. Mr. Blackwood, Agent Morrison, I'll be your escort. They walked through the terminal, early morning, not crowded yet, but people still noticed. The crutch. The man who looked like he'd walked through fire and kept walking. At baggage claim, something unexpected. Veterans, dozens of them. Some in wheelchairs, some missing limbs, some whole on the outside but carrying wounds that didn't show. They stood in a line, silent. When Garrett passed, they saluted. One man stepped forward, 70, maybe older. Navy SEAL patch on his jacket. We've got your sixth brother. Garrett stopped, looked at them. These men who didn't know him but knew what he was, what he'd survived, what he was about to do. He returned the salute, slow, precise. Thank you. That was all. But it was enough. The car ride into the city was quiet. Agent Morrison drove. Elena sat up front. Garrett and Titan in back. Buildings grew taller. Streets narrower. The weight of history pressing down from every corner. The hotel was downtown. Expensive, the kind of place Garrett had never stayed and never wanted to. But it wasn't his choice anymore. This thing had grown bigger than him. In his room, he sat on the bed. Titan jumped up beside him. Against regulations, probably. Garrett didn't care. He pulled out the photograph. The one from Afghanistan. Him and Titan in the sand. His thumb traced Titan's face in the photo. That same scar. That same look of absolute trust. Tomorrow, they'd face Victor. Tomorrow, they'd tell the truth. But tonight, Garrett just needed to be here. With the one thing that had never abandoned him. We made it, boy. All the way to Washington. Titan's tail thumped against the comforter. Garrett's chest tightened. Not from pain, from something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. He looked at Titan. The dog looked back. Tomorrow, Garrett said quietly. Tomorrow we tell them what happened. The hearing room was smaller than Garrett expected. Wood paneling, high ceilings, flags in the corner. 12 chairs at a raised bench. Gallery seating for maybe 50 people. But the cameras, dozens of them, national news, international. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a spectacle. Garrett sat at the witness table, Titan at his feet, Elena behind him in the gallery. The committee filed in. Senators, congresspeople, serious faces that had practiced looking concerned. At the center chair, woman Diaz, Montana representative, 60, sharp. She'd made her career on veteran affairs. She gavelled the session to order. This hearing is called to examine allegations of military misconduct, record falsification, and systemic abuse within the K-9 program. We are here to determine the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. She looked at Garrett. Mr. Blackwood, thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. Garrett nodded, said nothing. Before we begin, I want to note for the record that we have also subpoenaed Commissioner Victor Ravencroft of Blackwater, Montana Police Department, former Lieutenant United States Marine Corps. The side door opened. Victor walked in, suit and tie, confident, flanked by lawyers. He didn't look at Garrett, didn't acknowledge him, just sat at the opposite table, adjusted his microphone, waited. Chairwoman Diaz spoke again. Mr. Blackwood, you've submitted a written statement, but I'd like to hear it in your own words. Tell us what happened, starting from the beginning. Garrett leaned forward. The microphone squealed. He adjusted. His voice when it came was steady, quiet, but it carried. November 17th, 2004. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. My unit was ordered to raid a compound based on intelligence that a Taliban commander was present. The intelligence was wrong. It was a wedding. 12 civilians died in the crossfire. Murmurs in the gallery, cameras clicking. During the engagement, the building I was in took a direct hit. I was buried, critically injured. My K9 partner Titan dug me out, pulled me from the rubble while under fire. He saved my life. Garrett paused, looked at Titan. I was medevac to Germany. When I regained consciousness, I was told Titan had been killed in the blast. I was told his body was cremated. I was told to move on. He looked at Victor now, direct, unflinching. 20 years later, I discovered that was a lie. Titan wasn't dead. He'd been transferred stateside. His records falsified, his identity changed, all to cover up what happened in that village. Chairwoman Diaz leaned forward. Cover up how? If Titan survived, people would ask questions. Why was the handler critically injured, but the dog fine? What really happened? Who gave the order? The man who gave that order is sitting across from me right now. Victor's lawyer stood. Objection. My client is not on trial here. Diaz raised a hand. Sit down, counselor. This is a fact-finding hearing. Mr. Blackwood is entitled to speak. She turned back to Garrett. Continue. Garrett pulled out a folder. The USB contents, printed, organized. These are internal communications. Emails, memos, audio recordings, all from Commissioner Ravencroft, spanning 20 years. They document a pattern of falsifying military records, intimidating veterans, and covering up misconduct. He slid copies to the committee. There are 15 other cases. Soldiers declared KIA who survived. K9s disappeared. Incidents buried. All to protect careers. All to avoid accountability. The committee members flipped through pages, faces darkening. Victor stood, slow, calm. May I respond? Diaz nodded. Victor approached his microphone, looked at the committee, not at Garrett. What Mr. Blackwood is describing is a tragedy, the fog of war, bad intelligence, mistakes that haunt everyone involved. But to suggest there was some conspiracy, some cover-up, that's the fantasy of a man suffering from severe PTSD. He pulled out his own folder. Medical records. Thick stack. Garrett Blackwood has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and major depressive disorder. His memory is unreliable. His perception is compromised. This isn't his fault, but it does mean we need to view his testimony with appropriate skepticism. Garrett's jaw tightened. Victor continued. As for the dog, yes, 9117 was transferred stateside after the incident. Standard procedure for injured military working dogs. His records show he was reassigned to law enforcement. His name was changed to Rex as part of standard protocol. There was no conspiracy, just bureaucracy. He sat down, confident, in control. Chairwoman Diaz looked at Garrett. Mr. Blackwood, how do you respond? Garrett stood, slowly, the prosthetic aching. Commissioner Ravencroft is right about one thing. I do have PTSD. I do have brain injury. I do carry the weight of what I saw, he paused. But memory isn't just in the mind. It's in the body, in the scars, in the way Titan still positions himself to my left. The side where my leg used to be, the side he always walked on patrol. He looked at Titan. The dog's ears perked. Memory is in the way he responds to commands given in Pashto, a language I learned in Afghanistan, a language he was trained with, commands that no one in Blackwater PD would know. Chairwoman Diaz leaned forward. Demonstrate. Garrett turned to Titan, spoke one word, not English, Zargun, come. Titan stood, alert. Garrett gave a hand signal, one from 20 years ago, the signal for protect. Titan moved, positioned himself between Garrett and the committee. Not aggressive, just there, exactly where he'd been trained to be. The room went silent. Garrett spoke again. In Pashto, the command for stand down. Titan immediately relaxed, sat, tail wagging. Garrett looked at the committee. That's not bureaucracy. That's bond. And you can't fake 20 years of that. Victor's lawyer stood again. That proves nothing. Dogs can be retrained. Garrett reached into his jacket, pulled out the photograph. The one from Afghanistan. This was taken 3 days before the incident. That's me. That's Titan. Note the scar above his left eye, the notch in his right ear. He walked to the committee, set the photo down. Now look at the dog sitting in this room. Every eye went to Titan. The scar, the notch. Unmistakable. Garrett pulled out another document. Titan's original military file, obtained through a Freedom of Information request. K9-117, Handler Sergeant Garrett Blackwood. Distinguishing marks, scar left eye notch right ear. Belgian Malinois. Status is of November 2004, KIA. He set it beside the photo. Now explain how a dog declared dead in 2004 is sitting in this room in 2024 with the exact same identifying marks. Victor's face had gone pale. The lawyer tried one more time. Records can be wrong, mistakes happen. Garrett played his final card. The USB plugged into the room's display system. Audio file. Victor's voice. Clear, undeniable. The recording played. Victor on a phone call. 2006. Yeah, the dog's in Denver now. Changed the name. Buried the handler connection. If anyone asked, the original handler died in the blast. No loose ends. Another voice. Who's going to ask Victor's laugh? Cold. No one. These guys get forgotten. That's what we count on. The recording ended. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Chairwoman Diaz looked at Victor. Commissioner Ravencroft. Is that your voice? Victor stood, shaking. That recording is out of context. It's been edited. It's time-stamped. Authenticated by FBI forensics. Would you like to hear the other 15? Victor's lawyer grabbed his arm. Don't say anything. But Victor was past listening, past control. You want the truth, fine? Yes, I covered it up. Because that raid was my fault. My bad intel, my order. 12 civilians dead because I was too arrogant to listen to my sergeants. Too ambitious to admit I was wrong. His voice rose. Desperate. I was supposed to make captain. General one day. I had a path. And one mistake was going to destroy everything. So yes, I buried it. I declared Blackwood and his dog KIA. I sealed the records. I did what I had to do to survive. The gallery erupted, cameras flashing, reporters shouting. Diaz gavelled for order. Victor kept talking, couldn't stop. And you know what? It worked for 20 years. I built a career, a life, and nobody cared. Nobody asked. Because people like Blackwood, they come home broken and the country forgets. That's not my fault. That's just how it is. Garrett's voice cut through. Quiet, deadly. 15 other men, 15 other days. How many of them are forgotten because of you? Victor turned, finally looked at Garrett. You should have stayed dead. Federal agents moved, fast, surrounded Victor. Commissioner Victor Ravencroft, you're under arrest for falsifying federal records, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud. The cuffs went on. Victor's lawyers protested, but it was done. As they let him past Garrett, Victor stopped, looked at him one last time. You didn't win. You just delayed the inevitable. Men like me always come back. Garrett met his eyes. Men like you always fall. It just took 20 years for the ground to catch up. They took Victor away. The hearing room slowly emptied. Reporters chasing the story. Committee members conferring. The machinery of justice grinding into motion. Garrett sat, Titan's head in his lap. Elena approached, put a hand on his shoulder. You did it. Garrett shook his head. Titan did it, 20 years ago and again last week. All I did was show up. The days after moved fast. Victor was charged, federal trial set, his entire career unraveled in 72 hours. The 15 other cases reopened, families contacted, apologies issued, too late for some, but something for others. Congress passed legislation. The Blackwood Act, new protections for military working dogs, mandatory reunification programs for handlers and retired K9S oversight on record keeping. Accountability. They wanted to name it after him. Have a ceremony, photo op at the White House. Garrett declined. He didn't need his name on a building, didn't need a handshake from politicians who'd let this happen in the first place. What he needed was simpler. 2 weeks after the hearing, Garrett stood in Blackwater Town Square. New memorial, black granite, names engraved, not just human soldiers, K9s too. At the top, Titan, K9117, Afghanistan 2004, and below, in memory of all who served and were forgotten. The ceremony was small, town council, veterans, Elena, a few reporters who'd been following the story. Chairwoman Diaz gave a speech about sacrifice, service, the bond between handler and dog. Garrett didn't listen. He was watching Titan. The dog sat beside the memorial, calm, at peace, after they walked home. Just the two of them. Snow had started falling again. Light, quiet. Garrett's apartment felt different now. Not like a hiding place, like a home. He made coffee, sat on his bed. Titan jumped up beside him. The photograph sat on the nightstand. But Garrett didn't need it anymore. The memory it held was sitting right next to him. Warm, real, present. His phone buzzed. Message from Elena, saw the news. Victor's trial starts next month. They're expecting 25 years. Garrett typed back. Good. Another message. You going to attend? Garrett thought about it. Then, no, I'm done with him. Done looking back. He set the phone down. Looked at Titan. The dog looked back, tail wagging slow. Outside the sun was setting, orange and gold spreading across Montana sky. The mountains distant, solid, unchanging. Garrett opened the window, let the cold air in. It smelled like pine, like snow, like home. 20 years he'd been running. From the war, from the memories, from himself. But you can't run from things that live inside you. You can only learn to carry them. And carrying is easier when you're not alone. Garrett pulled out his old journal, the one from deployment, flipped to the last page, the entry from 2004. Below it, he wrote, December 2024. Washington, D.C., Titan and I testified. Victor Ravencroft arrested. Justice. Finally, they told me he was dead. They told me to forget. But some things refused to stay buried. We made it home. Both of us. He closed the journal, put it back in the box, under the bed, where it belonged. Titan's head rested against his leg. The dog sighed, content. Garrett ran his hand along Titan's back. Over old scars and new gray fur, over 20 years of distance that had never really been distance at all. You know what I think? Boy Titan's ear twitched. I think we spent 20 years finding our way back to each other. And now that we're here, we're not going anywhere. The sun dipped below the mountains, the room filled with shadow, but Garrett didn't turn on the light. He just sat with his dog in the quiet. And for the first time in 20 years, Garrett Blackwood felt something he'd almost forgotten. Peace. Outside, the world kept moving. Victor Ravencroft would stand trial. The Blackwood Act would save dogs and handlers. Stories would be written, lessons learned. But inside this small apartment above a hardware store in Montana, time stopped. A man and his dog, together again, finally home. Titan's breathing slowed, sleep coming easy, the way it does when you're safe. Garrett closed his eyes, let the exhaustion take him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, always did. But tonight was enough. The snow fell, silent, soft, covering the streets, covering the paths, and in the darkness, two heartbeats, steady, strong, together. Some bonds don't break. Not through war, not through time, not through lies or distance or death itself. Some bonds are forever. And this one had survived everything the world could throw at it. Garrett's last thought before sleep was simple. We made it, Titan. We finally made it. And in the morning when the sun rose over Montana, they would wake up together, the way they always should have been, the way they would be for whatever time remained. Two warriors, home at last.